welcome back to the BPD Bunch Brunch, where we get together with our favorite brunchy beverages to catch up, play games, and talk about all things BPD. I'm your host, Xannie, and today I am here with Lena, Katja, and Jay. What's everybody's brunchy beverage for the day? I got coffee I'm being pouring today.
Water.
Earl Grey.
Another one for the coffee club.
Coffee! I love your mug! Oh my gosh, that looks amazing.
It's so good. Like, I'm addicted to, like, crappy pound stores in the UK, and, like, I've got a lot of mugs that cost £1, but they're actually pretty cool.
So, in our first season of the BPD Bunch Brunch, we kind of had our episodes really closely aligned with our main episodes. But now that we finished talking about the symptoms, there are so many different things that we can talk about and open it up to. And one of the things we really wanted to bring to our season 2 of the BPD Bunch Brunch is, what is life like in functional recovery? You know, we tell so many stories about what it was like back in the day and how we learned to manage it, but what does managing it look like now? What are some of the struggles we go through? What are some of the wins that we're experiencing? So today, we are just going to catch up and talk about some of the things that we've been dealing with recently, whether positive or negative, and just have a grand old time. What's been going on in life?
It's a big question.
Yeah, life's been a little bit of a challenge for me, actually. The most recent stint, I guess. I just lost my grandfather, so I've been dealing with a feeling that I've never felt before. I've never had to deal with grief before. And as that was approaching, something that definitely went through my head was like, oh God, this is going to be like the first crisis moment or something that I'm going to have or have had in the past few years. And I'm like, how do I deal with this if I drop the ball, you know, if it's going to go wrong? So, yeah, it's been a bit of a difficult period, but I did in fact not fail at managing it, so self-belief is good.
How did you avoid it sort of falling apart?
Honestly, I would say that there's probably an element of like it hasn't fully processed yet. That would be my guess, because a lot of what I feel is not as intense as I thought it would be. And I mean, let's be clear, like this is intense and difficult for anybody, regardless of their status, mental health wise, or you know, what kind of person they are. It's just an objectively difficult situation to manage. So but I think it was also really useful to just be slow with myself, check in with myself, let myself feel things, and keep reminding myself that like those feelings will pass. Everything's not, you know, permanent. And also like to throw myself into other tasks and to some work, which, you know, as long as you don't allow it to become unhealthy, like you overdoing it and using it to escape your feelings, then it's kind of okay.
Yeah, that can be the hard thing with grief, though, is that it comes in sort of drips and drabs and doesn't come when you're expecting it, and sometimes comes when you are, but not in the same way. And I do think that sometimes doing other things that are important to you is helpful in my experience, you know. Can't just be with your feelings all the time.
For sure.
Well, I'm glad you're here despite all that going on in your life.
Thank you.
You say you haven't fully processed it yet, but I also, as someone who's a stranger to grief, I think it's definitely one of those things that would be really abnormal if after only a few weeks you had fully processed it, because in my experience, even just watching other people, you know, who don't have a diagnosed mental illness, right? Like they still takes them time to fully work through all of those feelings. And it's funny that you bring up like grief, because that's kind of one of the things that I've been working on lately, is being able to be okay with the fact like that grief isn't a thing where you sit with it for a moment and then you're like, okay, I'm done, right? It's a thing that comes back up and again and again and again, and sometimes it's strong and sometimes it's not, and trying not to judge that. So Katja, what's going on with you then?
So in terms of positive things, I have actually got a new job now, which for me is like quite a big thing to come out of my comfort zone and take on a new role. I think at my previous place, I was just so comfortable with the people. You know, it was a great environment, really supportive, but there wasn't really anywhere that I could go in that particular role. So the time had come for me to find a new position, but it's really scary and quite daunting to start somewhere new. Like, I don't know if you guys experience this as well, but I get really paranoid that people don't like me. And when you're in a new situation and people don't know you, it is really easy to jump to those kind of conclusions. So quite a lot of paranoia has happened since I started my new job with, do they like me? Do they like me? But are just pretending to like me? Do they not like me at all? And it's like, it's such a waste of mind space, but you can't really control it. And I think that's probably one of the things that I've struggled with. But in terms of the role itself, I'm really proud of myself for actually making that leap and trying something new, because I don't generally like to try new things. I do live like quite a controlled life, really, in terms of certain things, and being within my comfort zone. So yeah, I'm really glad that I've done it, but obviously those doubts sort of creep in.
So what do you do when those things come up? Like, do you have a way that you manage them, or do you just kind of let them run their course?
So what I normally do is there is an element of just letting it run its course, because I am aware that they are ridiculous thoughts I have. I mean, even if someone doesn't like me, does it even matter anyway if it's in a professional environment, which I know logically you're not going to get on with everybody anyway. You don't need everyone to like you. But what I normally do is, if I'm ever in doubt, I kind of look at people's body language and see, does it match up with what I'm interpreting in their speech and things like that. Or I look at the way that they interact with other people, and am I any different to the other people that they're interacting with? And normally it's not. It's just that I have such a warped way of interpreting things that I take it as a bit of a personal attack, when really there's nothing there.
I relate to that a lot. And when you were talking, I was thinking like, I tend to really assume people don't like me. Like, I assume negative intent, when most of the time towards other people, I take it, like, my instinctual approach is like positive intent. Like, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt before I really know them, whereas I assume people do the opposite with me. Most of the time I'm over analyzing things, when really, like, people are a lot more relaxed than what I'm imagining. It is hard, like, being in a completely new environment, but congrats on the new job.
Thank you. I think it's just going to take some time to get used to. Like, at my previous place, everyone was used to like the weirdness and the quirks. Some of it's STPD, some of it's just me, but it just takes time to build those relationships, really, and that can be quite scary to go into a new environment. But I think given time, everything will be absolutely fine.
I can share like what's been up with me, I guess.
Yes, please do.
I moved to Brazil, which is a big thing. There are certain things that I just wish I could express directly in English, but they don't translate directly. Like, I went to go buy like canvases yesterday to paint, and I didn't know the word, and so I'm just like, like doing like the charades of things. But in terms of like how it relates to my recovery, like, I don't think I could have ever done this like 10 years ago, like moved to a different country. Oh my God. Like, it's been really hard. I won't lie. There's been moments where I've just had like, I had a total meltdown one night because I just, like, not being able to have all the certain things, or it's the first time I've really experienced like firsthand what it's like being in a place where people don't look like you. Everywhere I go, people are like, oh, where are you from? Like, I know people are like trying to, be friendly and give a compliment, but it just like points out how different I am. And I think like before recovery, I could not handle like how different I feel from other people right now.
And I think that actually feeds into the last topic that we were talking about how people perceive us and our worries about people misperceiving us. I mean, I had a similar experience whereby I felt that people were not seeing me, they were seeing their perceptions of a European.
Actually, it's quite relevant to the things that I've been thinking about recently. In terms of like the image that you put out there, I think sometimes, when I do these episodes, I come across as quite lively person, which I can be, but I have had a lot of struggles in terms of self-confidence and social anxiety, which can be quite a big problem for me. And it kind of reached a point just before Christmas where I thought, I'm actually getting like a bit sick of myself, because I found that I was isolating myself, I was cutting myself off from people, from opportunities. And I remember walking into a shop and just feeling completely overwhelmed, and there weren't even that many people in the shop. And I thought, something has got to change. Like, I can't carry on living my life avoiding people and avoiding situations. So I've kind of taken the bull by the horns a little bit since Christmas, and I've signed up to do a comedy writing course. And then at the end of those 8 weeks, I'm going to have to stand up in front of a live audience and deliver a showcase, which to me right now feels absolutely terrifying. Like, I can't even imagine it, but I need to do something to develop my confidence, because I think if I leave it to get any worse, it's going to seriously limit my life. And going back to what you said, Xannie, about growth, like, sometimes you have to take yourself out of your comfort zone. So I'm trying to really just get myself out there a little bit more, but it is so terrifying.
How do all of you manage your emotional reactions to people you know sending you texts? Because that's another thing that I feel like there's still an aspect of that at least for me is still very much enduring. I saw your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Jay. He's like
This is something, the interpersonal aspect of like BPD is the area that I struggle with the most. I think I'm getting to a point now where I stop myself from reacting initially and sit with whatever it is that I receive, to make sure that how I respond is how I want to respond and not out of impulsivity.
So I find it quite difficult in terms of tone to interpret what people mean, which I think is quite common for people with BPD. For me, I kind of have it from both sides. So I've got the BPD side, but I've also got the STPD side of it as well, like reading like menacing intent in things that aren't there at all. So I find it really difficult if I get a text message and I'm not too sure what the tone of it is. I won't even reply. I'll just call them because it's easier. Like, I am that really annoying friend when you text me, I just call you straight away, because I find it really difficult to try and work out if there's any subtext to what people are saying. I would much rather do things face to face than via text, hence why nobody really contacts me, which is fine. I'd rather do it face to face.
Like you said, Katja, when things are happening over text, it's really hard to interpret tone or like really understand where, like, I had a situation with a friend where we got into an argument over text like maybe like 9 months ago, and then talked about it 6 months later, and it was like totally misunderstood where the other person was coming from, because it was all happening over text and you can't really like follow up on everything someone says and understand tone and all that. It's really hard. And so yeah, I try to avoid having conversations over text in general. And I think the other main thing is I try to assume that people are doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying from a good place, that they're not trying to hurt me. Because I think that's, for me, in my BPD recovery, that's been one of the biggest things, is like learning to trust that other people are not trying to hurt me. Even if they do hurt me, most of the time, they are not intentionally doing so. They are doing so because of miscommunication, or just it's not what they intended.
Yeah, I've gotten very good at doing that, like assuming, if not like positive, at least neutral intent with people, with like everybody except for like my husband. I'm frustrated by myself because there's this one myth, and that is, he knows me better than anybody. So therefore, if he says something and I am hurt, he did it on purpose. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I realize this is ridiculous because he is not thinking about me 100% of the time. I'm like, he has feelings also, right? So he is going to have moments where his emotions are going to get the better of him too. And yet I still, my reaction, especially internally, I don't always like let it out. I do okay sometimes at holding it back, but not always. And I feel so ashamed and like frustrated with myself because I feel like I look so great to so many people. And then the one person who is the most important to me gets like the shittiest part of my personality.
That's exactly how it works, though. The people we feel safest with are the people we let all our parts out.
Yeah. What's the most valuable thing we can end with?
I think it's just the idea that recovery doesn't have an end point, basically. So it's an ongoing process, and it's perfectly fine if you are still having struggles with BPD. Life is up and down. You know, you will have periods of time in your life when things are running quite smoothly, and then all of a sudden BPD will pop up and ruin it, because that's what it does. But, you know, functional recovery is not linear.
I'm really glad that you said that, because it does not mean that all the work you've done up to a certain point is useless if you have a moment where things aren't as good. And that can be really difficult, because especially for me, I feel like sometimes I don't really get rid of my black or white thinking. I make it different so that it feels like I'm not doing it, but I really am. You know, like I can never let anybody see anything that would make them think, ooh, that's BPD. Well, some people are going to think that even if I'm just crying because I cry more easily than other people do. But they don't know.
And I feel like it's important for people to remember as well that, like, being in functional recovery doesn't mean that you do not have the life experiences that were once destabilizing still, you know? Like, all that's changed is your toolkit to cope with those, right? Life still happens, and it happens for everybody, right? All of these difficult situations that we once may have found unbearable can still and often do occur. It's just how you come to those and how you navigate them that changes.
Just because you're diagnosed with BPD doesn't mean that every reaction you have to things happening in your life is because you have BPD. Like, people go through stuff, and stuff is hard, and when stuff is hard, we have reactions to it. At the end of the day, we're all human. I think I struggle with that a lot too, and that's why I'm saying it out loud so I can hear it as well, is that, you know, because I became a therapist, so I have this, you know, perception that I have to be a perfect human and I can't be in recovery from BPD. But the reality is that, like, at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a perfect human. We all, no matter what the degrees of it are, we all have flaws, and we all have stuff we go through, and if we were cut, we'd bleed. Like, that's what happens, you know. So it's okay to be imperfectly perfect or perfectly imperfect or whatever.
I don't want. Well, I'm getting like emotional.
Group hug.
Group hug, everybody. Well, thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us for brunch today. We hope you got some nuggets of wisdom to take with you as you move forwards this week. If you like what you see, you like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you do not miss a single episode. We have a couple of new things to tell you about. One is that our Patreon is now live. So if you really appreciate the show, consider supporting us. We have extra behind the scenes and certain opportunities for exclusive BPD Bunch merch. So check that out. We are also going to start doing more like Q&A type videos where we take questions from you, our viewers. So if you have any questions, either for specific cast members or for the group as a whole about BPD things or not, leave us a comment, or you can also go to our Instagram. If you want to send it anonymously, you can send us a DM, and your question may be featured in one of our episodes. So thank you again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.